Yo.
That was great.
That was awesome.
Yo. Good stuff,
Thank
yo.
you.
I like that grindy, that bass line.
The grit entertains me.
There's lots of good like metallic overtone stuff going on in those sounds. Yeah.
So before we ask you like what you did in your patch, we all want to say hi to everyone out there in the chat. Thanks for joining us. Perfect Circuit chat.
Yo. What's going on, everybody?
Yep. We got BBoyTech, Trevor, myself, Trovarsi, and our honorary guest tonight is Eric Schlappi from Schlappi Engineering.
Good to have you, man.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us what you're doing with your patch.
So I have it kind of set up as a like groovebox setup. I've got a kick with the I'm using the Monome Ansible grid as my sequencer. First track is the kick, which I'm making with a prototype analog oscillator, a VCA, and a wave folder, and some envelopes from maths. And then I've got a bass voice with another prototype analog oscillator going through the 100 grit, the angle grinder, and a VCA prototype function for envelopes. And then my snare is my Interstellar Radio output packaged into input. And then I've got a lead voice that is just the 3-body, no filters, couple of VCAs. It's actually super stereo, but probably sounds cool without being stereo anyway. Kind of patched as like a 2-op FM voice. Yeah, and between me doing some modulation, delays, the DLD had to go out to its own pod, ran out of space.
Before you move the camera, can we get like a closer look to that, to your, yeah. There it is, everybody.
The 3-body.
3-body.
Oh, that looks interesting. Fun.
Yeah, it does. Very cool.
Okay, we got to talk about the 3-body.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I was like. Before he gets too situated, I wanted to get like a quick zoom in on that for everyone.
And it's, well, the one thing too is, yeah, let's talk about the 3-body, and then I want to talk about these black panels that look so cool in your case.
Cool.
So what's up with the 3-body? What is that, a new module that you're working on for release soon, hopefully?
Yeah, we're probably talking fall, maybe late fall. There's some more revisions to do, but since I'd planned to show it at Super Booth, I wanted to start showing it.
Okay.
It's a triple digital oscillator built on an FPGA. It's designed so all 3 of the oscillators. I might see if this is helpful.
Okay, I'm going to zoom you back in too. So.
Oh, nice.
That might be
cool.
right. So there's 3 oscillators. Yeah. 3 oscillators. The one in the center has a couple of extra outputs and more phase modulation inputs than the ones on the outside. But it's set up so you can either use them as 3 totally separate oscillators, or you can, the outside oscillators are set up, if you put them in ratio mode, to be some ratio of the inside oscillator, which you can control by CV, or you have separate, your fine and coarse controls become mult and div. And that's how I was using it in the patch. Then there's 4 built-in VCAs for the indexes. So you can just put CV in to control your the amount of FM or phase modulation.
Okay.
And it does both frequency and phase modulation, which are related to each other, but in this context, they're a little different, mostly because it's easier to keep things stable with phase modulation. Once you have a bunch of like frequency modulation going back and forth between a few oscillators, things get out of control pretty quickly.
So it sounds like you can just add a couple of envelope generators and it's like a full synth voice, basically. Cool.
Yep.
Nice, really nice. Somebody asked, does it have does the 3-body have those touch thingies like the 100 grit?
No.
Touch thingies, I love that. They realized that it didn't. They said, "Oh, okay, no, it doesn't happen."
There's a lot on there already.
There is. It looks like a full featured, like a very cool voice. How long have you been working on developing it?
A little over a year now.
Wow. Okay. So how the sort of idea come about, and made you, like, what was the inception of the idea?
So I've got those prototype analog oscillators are actually older prototypes, and I wanted to be able to implement arbitrary phase modulation and through zero frequency modulation, and I wasn't able to get to a place that I was happy with either of those in the analog realm, and then I was like, let's, I heard about these open source FPGA tool chains that are usable, and yeah, so I decided to dive into that, and I would usually, qualify myself as a analog snob, but as a electrical engineer, I can't let it stand there. You have to like figure out what it is that the things do better.
Right.
And I'm not getting rid of my analog oscillators, but this thing does do some things that you can't do in analog.
And that's respectable. I mean, I think that's, I kind of like the idea of like, I like to have digital that does digital well and does stuff that maybe analog can't approach as easily. And I like analog for what analog is great for. And it's cool to have them kind of coexist in my world. I dig that.
That's where I'm going. I just like that deep digital through zero FM is like a super sweet sound that you can't really, I mean, there's some sweet analog through zero FM oscillators, but it's a different thing.
I'm just curious. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
I'm just curious about FPGA, because I know that quite a few synths recently have digital oscillators have used that, and I hear people saying like FPGA digital oscillators sound better than other types of digital oscillators, but I'm just like, I've never heard anyone explain why. I'm just curious now that you've built a FPGA digital oscillator, if maybe you have an idea.
Yeah.
So it's logic fabric. You can make anything you want on it. So that's, someone called it a CPU. There's no CPU on it. It's pure logic. You can instantiate a CPU on it, which more reasonable people would probably do, and in the future I will probably do that. But this thing has no CPU on it. It's just straight up logic, which means it's everything that's happening is happening at the same time. Well, there's some pipelining, but it's real fast. It's limited in some ways, but different things than are limited by a CPU. Kind of just it's a different mindset. It's cool for if you want something to go real fast and real high quality, but be really simple, then it's really good for that. So like the XAOC Odessa additive oscillator says on the back it has like 2,500 signs, and it's using a very similar chip. And yeah, that's a great use for it. Like 2,000 simple sine wave oscillators is an excellent use. Things like user interfaces. Next time I'm going to implement a CPU to handle the user interface. It totally sucks in logic.
Well, I mean, that thing still, I mean, and obviously I haven't touched it and I've only seen it just briefly right now, but the interface looks like it's pretty well laid out and pretty well thought out. Is it just if you want to do more advanced stuff, you have to kind of go that route?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to keep it like, given my analog background, I want it to feel like an analog oscillator. I didn't want menus or anything. There is some modality to it through the switches, but like it's all knob per function. There's no
menu diving, things like that.
The advantages of digital here are the through zero modulation, the phase modulation, and the ability to track oscillators and do divisions and do ratios. But there isn't, the other digital stuff isn't on this. It's a very analog style oscillator.
Cool. How'd you come up with the name 3-body? Is it indicative to the 3 oscillators? And
have you read that 3-body problem book?
No.
It's this Chinese science fiction book from a few years ago. It's insane. I highly recommend it. But I also like the idea of because it is referring to the three body problems like an orbital, three orbiting bodies, planets, and I like the idea of thinking of oscillators as like spinning bodies.
Nice. Probably okay. Now I'm curious. I'm pulling up the book so in a tab.
I know. I just did it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read it too. I haven't read it.
I just dropped it in the.
Very cool. Very cool. Is it possible we could hear some of the oscillator, some of the three body, just you know, without the other stuff, so we could kind of get an idea of how it sounds?
Yeah.
As long as you don't have to tear down your patch because you're going to play us out. So, you know.
I mean, I'll probably break the patch, but it's fine. I can get that So right now we've got it. We're just listening to the center oscillator. I'm still figuring out how I want to refer to the whole things. I don't like oscillator 1, 2, and 3. I kind of like center and left, right, or something.
I like
that. So the center oscillator right now, we're only listening to that, but we're phase modulating it with the outside oscillators. So as we...
Ooh, that's nice. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Trevor, that's right up your alley right there. Yeah.
That's dope. As if I need another thing on the list.
I know, you just added that to the list. That's why I was like, oh yeah.
It's easy to get lost. One thing that I'm kind of discovering with it is that since I'm kind of providing to like the guts of a phase and frequency modulation synthesizer, it's useful to have a lot of modulation sources. Like right now I'm just using 2 envelopes because I didn't want to get a bigger case involved, but I'm using the same envelopes for my output VCAs as I'm using for my frequency modulation indexes or phase modulation indexes, which there's both of them on here. But if you can do that separately, then you get really cool sounds where the timbre is changing separately from the volume.
Nice.
And that's a lot of fun to do. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to patch it up. I kind of like thinking, like a big part of it was wanting to experiment with the ideas behind the like Chowning FM stuff, because that's all about ratios. But without, like, I don't like the way Yamaha implemented it with algorithms. Like, that seems unnecessarily complicating to me when the algorithms are just like, you're modulating this oscillator with that oscillator with a VCA in the center. You don't need to call them algorithms. You can just make a routing matrix.
Right. No doubt. But very cool. And how big is it? What's the HP? What's the size of it?
It's 30 HP. It's 30 as small as I could get it, which is not small.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've packed quite a punch in that 30 HP, so it's pretty dope. Yeah. You any ideas of what the price point is going to be yet, or you still kind of ways out from that?
I have an idea. I'm maybe gonna like not say it just to give myself some wiggle room later on, but I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna make it as affordable as I possibly can.
Yeah, totally.
So, are you projecting fall? Is that, or when were you? Is that?
It's conceivably possible. I have a big PCB rev in front of me, so like the back of this thing has 1,000 wires on it. So if I can nail it, like the firmware is mostly done, but there's 1,000 wires on the back. If I can nail it, then yeah, if the fall is totally possible. But if the stuff that usually gets me before the end of the year, I think is absolutely doable.
Okay.
Nice. Is it going to come?
We can wait that long.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Is it going to come with a black panel? Like because the one in your case is the black panel, or no?
It looks.
Did I see that right?
Yeah. So I've been kind of inconsistent, but the way I'm headed, if it's economically feasible for me, like I love the chrome on chrome aesthetic I started out with.
Yeah, that's nice. That's very nice.
And
what kind of place are you looking for? Modeling
Siri, cut it out. I'm busy.
So I did some PCB faceplates, which is, I think the black PCB faceplates look really good for prototyping, which is why it's black. But I'd like to offer both. On the current angle grinder and 100 grit, I have both aluminum black and aluminum silver panels. And if it doesn't make my wallet cry, I will do that.
Nice. It looks good. It looks good in black. But I have to say, though, I do like your aesthetic of your modules. Obviously, this is the first time you and I have met, and it's good to meet you, good to talk to you. But I've known about your modules for a while, and I always have dug how the panels and the knobs and has a very distinct look. And when you did the 100 grit and the little touchy thingies, as somebody called them,
Right.
It all just kind of worked together. It's a very cool aesthetic.
It took a while to dial that in, and I'm hopefully not going to change it.
I think it's very clean layout.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, you go ahead. Yeah, I was just commenting on the layout too.
Thank you. Yeah, that takes, you wouldn't believe how long that takes to make something look clean.
I can imagine. I mean, just when you start thinking of Eurorack and the size and then the print, I mean, that's.
Why can't it be bigger?
Yeah, attention to detail is something else. Somebody's asking, is there going to be an expander for the 3-body? But I can't imagine what they want to expand.
They really
possible.
Okay.
But I haven't decided on that. I found a number of like tweaky things, of course. Like in the past, I've put headers on the back of my modules for like tweaky use cases, and no one ever uses them, and I just get emails about it, and it doesn't seem like people like headers on the back of modules very much, or at least they don't use them. But
right.
So there may be some sort of like switch expander type thing, but it's we'll see on that one.
All right. So since everyone keeps kind of circling around the touchy thingies, let's talk about the 100 grit.
So touch thingies, I have a bunch of things in mind for the touch thingies. One of the things that made the 100 grit so good for them is that I wasn't trying to track volts per octave, so like some random, I wasn't trying to make a clean thing, so like random electrical noise is like, fine, bring it on. And with the 3-body, like some of the use cases are super clean, and I want that ability. I may, the chat's cracking me up, but
yeah, I touch those things and shake the
know,
right?
Matt is on it tonight.
I've thought about, and there's no space left on the 3-body panel, but yeah, expanders and things that will work with it with touch points, touch thingies is absolutely going to happen. I think that's fun, and I want to be able to play a noise set just by like
nice nice.
I think that'd be fun. I usually designate a point in every set to just like jam on the touch points on the 100 grit, just like it's the touch point solo.
Nice. I remember the first time I saw the mod like in person. Patrick PLB came over to my house and he had it in his case, and he like started jamming and like touching it, and yeah, it's pretty dope.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about well, let's talk about the Interstellar. There's some chat in the chat about that one as too.
Yeah, the Interstellar. So one thing I keep mentioning, someday I'm going to remember to put in the manual or put it on a video. But if you got one of these and you haven't done this, you should totally patch the error output to the input.
Okay.
That's something that I discovered after I released it, actually. When I released it, when I designed it, I thought it would be more of a processor. But the way I use it is more of a noise generator, but that's the wrong channel. You can do... But I also use it for hi-hats, which...
Okay. What's the switch? The switch for 1, 2, 3. What is that?
So it changes the mode. So what's actually happening in there, which I was talking about with Trevor a little bit earlier, is that it's taking an input signal, it's converting it into high frequency pulse trains, and then it's deconverting it with a different clock rate. You can use it as an effect, but it pretty much destroys whatever you put through. It's like really, really extreme FM. You could...
Someone asked if you could put a vocal through it, or...
if you check my SoundCloud, I put that that radio Sesame Street thing through it, so you can get a sample of those things. Yeah, even by my standards, and I listen to heavy music, it might be a bit extreme for vocals, but absolutely try. Like, if you're the type of person that puts your vocals through Metasonics gear, then you would probably like your vocals through Interstellar Radio. I'm not really hooked up to do it right now.
Yeah.
You said it's on your SoundCloud, though? Is that...
Yeah, on the Schlappi Engineering SoundCloud, there's some examples of doing that stuff.
Cool.
I'll drop it in the chat later.
So it works as like it's like a modulation and then demodulation, but it's like it's not really in tune, so you get like the weird artifacts from it.
Yeah, when I first designed it, I thought it would be. Oh, I thought it'd be more like, because there's a clock rate conversion, I thought it would be more like downsampling. But after a bit of time, spending more time with the theory, I think it's really like really heavy duty frequency modulation, like 4 layers of heavy duty frequency modulation. But you're using this automotive chip, a voltage to frequency converter, which is what people outside of the audio world call a VCO. It takes a DC voltage and converts it to some frequency. Yeah, so it comes in a voltage, high frequency pulse train, and then another one of those chips inside the feedback loop of a PLL tries to deconvert it. PLLs have an interesting property of kind of like frequency domain reversing things. Like if you put a multiplier in the feedback loop, you get out a divider. If you put a divider in the feedback loop, you get a multiplier. And if you put an oscillator in the feedback loop, you get out the voltage controlling the oscillator ish, with weird lag and chaotic properties that come with PLLs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Telephone game. Yeah, that's a simpler way of explaining it.
You have you have a couple of prototypes in your case, and not necessarily needing to prototypes. You don't necessarily have to go into any of that stuff. But I'm curious, because you actually you may have said that's a prototype, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times. Any
I know.
What's the process for you like with when you prototype is something, you get to a point where you're like, that's going to stay a prototype? Or are you still at some point probably like, you know what, all of these are going to be products as they are?
Well, we're so I make the things that I need, and I frequently feel like no one else makes it the things that, even really simple things that act the way I want them to act. So I've made things like simple analog VCOs and VCAs. However, Eurorack's pretty advanced at this point, and whether like you guys are not going to be as stoked if I say, hey, I made a discrete VCA as opposed to like I made several different discrete VCAs, but I'm not sure that anyone cares about that except for me. But these elements will probably make them into it will probably make it. I'm going to stop looking at the chat. These elements will probably make them their way into bigger things that probably have touch points and like lots of functionality. Just because, the world. So that making the things that I need, but like the more basic things will probably stay personal prototypes, just because it costs me money to make them.
That's kind of cool, because the thing is, it's kind of like what you're basically kind of doing is almost building a library of circuits that you'll be able to use in other modules later, or other devices later. So then you're kind of cutting down your R&D time for future things where you're like, I need a discrete VCA. Well, I have a discrete VCA circuit that's designed just the way I like it. Just put it in there. We'll panelize it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna try switching out. Right now I have 2164 based VCAs and 3-body, but I'm probably gonna switch those out for my discrete circuit on the next rev and see how I like those. Because I like the way they saturate a lot better.
Okay.
Nice.
But yeah, exactly. Building a library of things I can come back to. And also it means I can, anything I dream up system I want to put together, like now I have all these things laying around. I don't have to go out and buy any more VCAs. I have half a dozen different ones that I've made.
That's really dope.
I know. So do you want to... Oh, go ahead, Trevor.
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, I was just going to say there was an interesting question in the chat about the 100 grit, because I've heard it work as a great like distortion and like crazy like self-oscillating fuzz type sound. But someone was asking, can you get it to work more as like a regular filter as well, or does it just do the crazy distortion stuff?
Yeah, totally. So I actually spent a lot of time on that. The 100 grit has starting to get dark. So it's got the dist out, which I use most of the time, and you can't see. But right above the dist out is just a straight up out. And you've got a pretty nice implementation of a diode ladder filter with OTA VCA in there. See, so distortion output. So the angle grinder is also distorting it, but yeah, so now we've got just a clean triangle wave going in there. And yeah, there's your low pass, your Moog low pass filter. There is a header on the back. I just got done saying that no one touches headers, but so I change the resonance, the feedback circuit, so it doesn't drop bass the way the old Moog filter, like the classic mold. Like I changed a couple of things, but the heart of the filter is a pretty traditional ladder filter. So I did change the resonance feedback path, but if you want that traditional Moog whistling, you can get it. You're not going to get great volts per octave out of it. Like it's the FM1 is FM2 is volts per octave, but I didn't bother temperature compensating because that's a whole pain in the butt, and I've already got these antennas on the front attached to that same node. So like
it's kind
but you can use it as a pretty clean like ladder filter and VCA if you want.
Let's try that.
Or you can play a noise set with it.
And last but definitely not least, the angle grinder, the one with the faders.
That one's pretty strange. The way I use it most often these days is doing the
what are you running through it?
this is what I'm running through it.
Free body? Oh, okay.
It's this one. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a prototype triangle analog oscillator. So I'm using it as a wave shaper.
That sounds good.
That one's a lot of fun.
And of course, you can pull, instead of taking from the wave shaper out, you can take from the filter output. High pass filter because it wasn't being used. When you put it in, start pulling from the filter outputs and all of those sliders, when you're taking from just the output, it's a wave shaper. But when you're pulling from the filter output, then they're all feedback paths. So it just gets, the technical term is like pole mixing filter, but they're all nonlinear feedback paths. So it's like super chaotic, tons of feedback. And there's other ways to use it. I also, since it has an LFO built into it, I'm almost always a quadrature LFO with 4 different sine wave phases. I'm always passing that around the patch. I find that's a really good, like, sort of master LFO.
To help modulate.
Someone recently described it to me as a puzzle box. It doesn't. It feels like it should be more clear, but it does kind of, I think for a lot of people, they feel that way about it, where it, depending on the configuration of the knobs, even though it's a single analog circuit, it does go into these different modes. You can also use it as a really strange, like 4-step sequencer.
Yeah, how did you? I was playing with it earlier, and I didn't fully understand it, but I got a lot of interesting and fun sounds out of it. But how do you use it as a sequencer?
So, yeah. So if you take the input and you turn the input all the way down, then there's these 4 sliders or comparators. So then if you turn it all the way down, then it's comparing the phase of the LFO versus 0. So these become just steps. And you can see them
That's
with this in the LFO mode. You can see it going through the steps. So yeah, and you can sync that kind of by using the inject input with a solid square wave clock signal. And then you can make it get really weird by feeding it back in itself, and it stops oscillating predictably.
Nice. Okay.
Can you also use the, you were saying in filter mode, you get like chaotic feedback paths. Could you like turn the cutoff low enough that you get like a weird chaotic modulation coming out of there? Okay, cool. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I usually use it somewhere in between all these modes where it just, yeah, it gets strange, but it's like you can, once you kind of understand where the different modes are, you can navigate between them in reasonably intuitive ways, I think. Maybe only intuitive to me, but I think other people have figured it out.
It's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're getting some attention for the body modules that are in the case. And I think you like this is a really clean triangle wave, or what was it?
It's, I can almost guarantee that will never be released. It's a nice clean analog triangle oscillator. I have ideas. I'm not sure if I kind of like the idea of like number body being like number of oscillators is like a convention.
Yeah, I like that. It's dope.
But I'm worried about people being confused if I use 3-body as a digital oscillator, and then if I release an analog oscillator with body, I'm worried about getting like a lot of confusion. So I'm not sure, but there will probably eventually be some sort of more twisted analog oscillator, possibly with touch thingies on it at some point.
Very cool.
Sounds like fun. Oh, someone. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say, someone was also asking if you're thinking about doing like a crazy noise generator. Like they mentioned the MASF OSC3, which is a good one, and like also some of the Trogotronic boxes are good for just like, it's like kind of like noise, but it's not just like straight up white noise.
So I would argue that I've already released a pretty crazy noise oscillator, but I will. I'm trying to create like a system that all works together. So in the immediate future, probably not another crazy noisy thing, like things that will go there, but not their main function. There's a crazy noisy thing I want to make, but I think I should do a couple other more conventionally useful things before I get there.
Before you go there.
Yeah, because the Interstellar, you were saying you were using the Interstellar overdrive as like hats and snares and stuff, so it'll do a lot of those crazy noise sounds that aren't quite white noise, right?
Yeah, and there's other tricks, like if you pair it with some sort of shift register, like not in the case right now, but I have the Omi Industries shift register, and if you pair it with that thing, like you can insane digital noise for days, or analog gray area analog square wave noise. Yeah, that another thing I tend to do during my sets is have some point where I just hit, like usually I'm using it as a snare or hi-hat, but if I just open up that envelope and just hit people with 30 seconds of the Interstellar Radio, it's pretty satisfying on a big sound system.
Yeah.
Nice. I want to check in with everybody in the chat. I know that they've been participating and had a lot of great questions, but I just want to make sure, because we're getting closer to the top of the hour, if anybody has any other questions. And just say also thanks for hanging out with us. It's been I didn't even realize the time. Like I was like over here taking notes and stuff too. So, yeah.
And I'd like to submit that I really do like the convention of the word body as oscillators, and that analog to digital sort of thought gets me thinking. So I'd like to submit here that you could call the digital or the analog one a celestial body and the other one just a body. So you start to differentiate these things.
Oh, yeah. I like that convention. I mean, cool. I could come up with ideas for different ways that different numbers of oscillators interact with each other all day long, right?
Yeah, that's super cool, man. I'm definitely going to go check out that book now because I'm very curious.
I dropped a link in the chat earlier. I'll drop it in there.
Cool.
They keep... Someday they say they're going to do some sort of... I would watch a movie of that. They'll probably screw it up, but... or an anime, like ideally an anime. three-body problem goes like actually the most epic you can get. Like by the end of the series, it encompasses all of time and space, which is what I want out of my science fiction.
Nice. Cool. So Eric, are you ready to play a little bit more for us?
Sure. Let's see if I can get my patch back.
Okay.
While you're kind of sorting that out, I'll just say again, thank you to everyone for hanging out with us tonight. Yeah, and if you have any other questions, quick drop them in the chat while you have the opportunity. And yeah, you guys have anything to add? BBoyTech, Trevor?
Yeah, just thanks for coming on this show. It was fun to talk about all the crazy noisy modules. So
no doubt.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
No doubt. Yeah, Eric, it was good meeting you, man. I enjoyed picking apart your case and kind of getting your thought process on how you create things, and very unique modules. Love what you do, man.
Thank you. I've watched your reviews for a long time, and it's great to talk to you.
Thanks. Cool, man. Appreciate that.
So we're all looking forward to the 3-body too, Eric. So we'll wait patiently.
Heck yeah.
I'm really curious to check that out now. It sounds damn good.
All right. Are you? How are you doing on your?
Give me 1 minute, and I think I can get it back in tune.
Cool.
Cool. Well, while you're setting that up, we could let people know about our other upcoming streams. Next week, Thursday, we're going to be talking about like gain staging between Eurorack and line level stuff, and like using Eurorack effects with line level and effects pedals with Eurorack, and using outboard mixers with Eurorack, or using Eurorack mixers inside of your Eurorack, and like all different types of routing and stuff like that. So if you're curious to learn more about that, tune in next Thursday. So
that's right. Yeah, you and I will be doing that one together.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. There's another question too for you, Eric. Just Derek, who's out in the chat here, is 100 grit sensitive to other electromagnetic environmental noise, or is it just basically stable until you touch the nubbies? I like that one. That was a new word for the hour.
Let's go with nubbies. It's pretty stable until you touch the nubbies. There are some places where touching the nubbies will pick up radio. I haven't had that happen in any place I hang out with too often, but I have seen. There's only like one of the nubbies that will pick up radio if you touch it. It's that one.
Top. Okay.
Top right, left, top left.
Right.
It's somewhere in the manual. I have actually indicated this behavior, but I haven't experienced it too many times. And like my design philosophy is kind of like everything should be able to function as the like vanilla musical way you want that thing to work. Like in the case of the 100 grit, like nice low pass filter with a VCA, but it should also go totally insane, and that should all be like extended functionality, but without getting rid of any of the things that you expect to be there should be there.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I like that.
Mm-hmm. The flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Should I see where I ended up with?
Sure.
I think I can wrangle this into a playable state.
All right. All right, cool. So on that note, I'll tell everyone thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Eric. And we'll see you guys back here on Thursday. Trevor and I giving you he gave you the details on that one, but we'll see you next Thursday. All right. And Eric will play us out. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Peace.
Thank you.